Alright everyone, it's time to talk about the free, fair, and open internet that we were promised when people were saying, oh, we must support net neutrality, ISPs shouldn't throttle material, they shouldn't pick and choose who gets good or bad service, because it's unfair, it makes the web unequal, and that's a problem. It's going to cause massive problems. Selling customer data, violating their privacy, that would be pretty bad too. And at the time I said, yeah, I'll stand for net neutrality. For a while I opposed it, but when I realized that the alternative was arguably worse long term, I said net neutrality shouldn't be abandoned for now. What we should be doing is using it as a stand-in until we can get either a constitutional amendment or a de facto listing as a public utility for the whole web by Congress. One that wouldn't give them excessive regulatory power, but would give it First and Fourth Amendment protections to keep everything equal and fair and open, because that's kind of why the internet is widely used, because it's fair and open, because people are able to put their views out there, the free market takes over, and people's views compete. Unfortunately, it looks like a lot of these same people don't have a problem with various websites stabbing one another in the back. Wouldn't that not lead to the same sort of polarizing situation as letting the ISPs throttle data? Look, you're worried about the ISPs might suppress some website, giving control to monopolies. That's exactly what's happening with like Cloudflare right now. Now today it's the Daily Stormer. Okay, maybe not a lot of people care about the fact that they were attacked because Cloudflare's like, oh, we're just going to make the arbitrary decision, and their CEO openly admitted this in an internal email. I made an arbitrary decision, I woke up in a bad mood, I'm going to cut them off. Just throw them to the wolves. Okay, today it's the Daily Stormer. What if tomorrow it's some other political site that you construe as having Nazi ties but doesn't? I saw Patreon actually went down briefly because it lost its protection. Some of us using that platform have nothing in common whatsoever with any identitarian movement. I use Patreon because it is a free speech loving platform for crowdfunding, not because I consider my content specifically to be edgy to that same degree. I simply stand for liberty, but if I stand for liberty, wouldn't I want the company that's taking a cut of the crowdfunding that I'm getting to also be pro-liberty? That's why I'm using them. It's the same reason that I'm on Minds, as opposed to wasting my time on Facebook. I would rather use Minds. In time, I probably won't have a Facebook page. The same is true of Gab. The reason I use Gab isn't because, oh, I appreciate this far-right echo chamber. I use Gab because they promise not to ever kick me off for saying something off-color. So if I crack a joke that's in poor taste, if I do that on Twitter, I can get banned maybe for that or suspended. If I do it on Gab, nobody cares. That's the big difference. We are now, a lot of these people are passively accepting the fact that websites that provide invaluable services that are required essentially at this point for any site to function are picking and choosing who gets their protection, who can have a YouTube page to advertise that they exist, who can have a Facebook group, who can have a Twitter handle, who can have anything on, who can register a website with some actual provider of that hosting. This sets a horrible precedent. Not because in the first stage, oh, well, we're just kicking some Nazi site off the platform, who cares? Yeah, that probably most people don't. See, here's the problem. The problem is twofold with how they're acting right now. The first problem in relation solely to Daily Stormer is that the Daily Stormer just got more airtime, more free publicity than they've ever gotten in the past of its entire existence, because everyone's talking about how they got screwed over and haha, look at the Nazis here. Okay, you've just popularized to many, many millions of people that probably didn't know they existed in the first place. I only became aware of it a year ago. You've just popularized the fact that they exist to large crowds of people, not all of whom are immediately going to hate what they're doing, which means that they're going to get additional audience, additional traffic. So good job. It's the Streisand effect. You can't suppress. It's impossible. You can beat up on them and abuse them as much as you want. It's not going to work. More people will actually know that they exist, and then they'll say, well, they're being, all these dishonest firms and government figures are talking about how evil it is. I got to go check it out for myself. It's a natural inclination for certain, especially certain age groups. So you've just helped them to popularize their message. So I guess good job to Cloudflare and all these other, and GoDaddy and all these other groups. You did exactly the wrong thing. It's not going to work. I'm warning you right now, it's not going to work. They're going to end up growing because of this. They're also going to grow more fanatic. They'll expand. So good job. The second problem is that now you've set this precedent for basically what could lay the groundwork for a civil war on the internet. Can't you imagine a time in which various larger firms, whether they're left or right-leaning, begin to purposely screw groups that they ideologically disagree with? They begin to put, instead of thinking of profit first and foremost, which means they want stability, don't rock the boat, don't give in, let cooler heads prevail, because they want any platform that wants to do business with them. They're making a profit, so they want that platform to do business with them. Now they're engaged in an ideological struggle more than a fiscal struggle. What's going to happen, I think, is that groups led by people who tend to lean towards the left or towards the right will begin screwing one another. They will begin to polarize further. What you then get is a spiraling out of control of fanaticism. Because what you're going to end up with is a couple of ideological echo chambers in which the purists will tend to win out over the moderates. Right now we've got an open internet in which moderate, sane individuals can prevail. In which they can say, hey, this is fringe stuff. Who cares? Calm the fuck down, basically. Right now those cooler heads can prevail online because they have the same capability to attract a platform as anyone else. What you're going to do, though, is polarize the internet into respective camps. False dichotomy. It's totally artificial, but that's how they'll self-segregate. They will become echo chambers. In those echo chambers, the people who make the most money, get the most views, and gain the most fans will tend to be the total ideologues, the fanatics. Because those people will then proceed. Within that echo chamber, it's possible for them much more easily to browbeat people who don't fall in line with a purist sort of ideology. So that means that instead of having some person who's marginally left or marginally right gobbling up support and saying, well, all this fringe stuff is ultimately, it's not good for the nation, it's not good for the world. Instead of getting that center collapses, like it has already politically, by the way, in Europe. I pointed this out many months ago and predicted that this would happen eventually. Sorry to, again, people think I have a penchant for saying, oh, I predicted this would happen. I literally did. Go back through my videos. The center's collapsing. It's collapsing in this country politically. It's begun to collapse on the whole internet. And it's not even an issue of radical or alt-centrism. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying anyone who doesn't toe some ideologically purist line where they're either goose-stepping or they're hailing Stalin. People who fall outside of the fringes now get screwed. Cloudflare needs to understand this. Your actions towards the Daily Stormer you think are ideologically great. Oh, we're kicking Nazis, off of our protection, so that's okay, because they're like lunatics or something. Yeah, that's not the point. The point is that you've set the stage now for this sort of thing to continue. It was already happening on social media, but people had their own websites, their own sort of independent stuff, and so yeah, there was an echo chamber, but it wasn't a complete echo chamber because social media was pulling most of that weight. Now you're popularizing a fringe site that will probably end up hosted in Russia or something, so it'll be beyond anyone's reach. They're still going to develop protection services. Some service will come along specifically billing itself as we're the far-right hacking protection service or we're the pro-liberty one. Now, the only saving grace here for the slow decline of the internet at this time, the only saving grace is that as the free market takes hold, pro-liberty platforms will spring up that will have a respect for people even of those fringe ideologies, breaking the echo chamber and restoring things to normalcy. That's another prediction that will happen. It's just a matter of how long do we have to deal with this bullcrap before that occurs, because the big tech firms, obviously at this point, have given in to moral panic. It's the same moral panic I've been talking about. They've now joined the fray. You should be afraid of this. Because even though long-term the problem probably solves itself, for some time you'll have more fanaticism. What will end up having to happen is that the fanatics will have to get violent and crazy enough so that the average person can't possibly support either side and says, okay, enough is enough. What we're doing isn't working. We need a change. At that point, a pro-liberty internet will spring up in its place. Now, that's probably, ultimately, it's really good for the world. But you have to go through probably several years of pain to actually get there. Unfortunately, many people who aren't ideological fanatics are likely to get targeted anyway because they have a presence on websites that are associated with, and the legacy media usually makes that declaration. I'm sure they're being honest, like the Wall Street Journal when it said PewDiePie had Nazi tendencies. Now look at what he's saying today, he clearly doesn't. They're the ones that make that determination, the site gets targeted. So other sites that would protect them, they back off. They say, no, we don't want any part of this. Go ahead, be vigilantes. Basically commit crimes, and you're trying to hack or whatever. You're fooling around with that stuff. We're not going to provide any protection services because we can't ideologically support you. It's not the point of you ideologically supporting them. It's the point of maintaining the stability of the entire internet. That's the point. Social media needs to realize this too. When they start kicking off ideological fringe materials, whether left or right, you regress these groups into a purist echo chamber in which the worst voices tend to win out. As opposed to when they're on the net at large in social media, they're getting hammered constantly by people who are more moderate, and they're actually preventing... It's like having a substance that can prevent an out-and-out nuclear reaction. It's a moderating feature. Cold, borated water or something. Unfortunately, when you remove that moderation, at the grassroots level, generally it is. When you remove the moderates, when you kick them off the platform, you piss them off, alienate them, they say take a hands-off approach. They're like, okay, enough of this bullcrap. You get a smaller group, but a much more purist group, and they become more likely to be violent. We're beginning to see this. I've been warning for some time that that's what would happen if we went down this route. What we need is a pro-liberty internet where the ideologues can spout off whatever they want, debate one another, and get debated by the vast bulk of the population that will never take them seriously, to prevent violence, to prevent the denigration of the internet into something that's no longer as economically feasible, number one, or as feasible for the free flow of information, number two. Because firms that have no actual fanatic leanings will be involved in this. Individuals that have no fanatic leanings will be involved in this. Both sides will also attempt to market themselves to everybody else who's not already part of their movement. You're going to see, I think over the next year, you're going to see a steady movement of larger presences on YouTube, Twitter, and elsewhere. Basically anywhere where there's political chatter at all. You're going to see them increasingly, you'll notice this. Take stock, think about this, and look out for it over the next year. See if they don't start saying different things that indicate that, at least subconsciously, they're moving further left or further right. Again, false dichotomy, totally artificial. They'll begin to fit those stereotypes. You watch. You watch. You see if that doesn't happen. That's exactly what'll happen. You're going to see the people that right now you agree with, you're going to stop agreeing with if you haven't changed your own platform, because theirs will change. They'll become more fanatic. Unfortunately, others who try to, again, moderate the situation and prevent chaos from breaking out will get hammered from both sides. They're going to take a beating because all the people on the far left and right will basically be calling them names for not joining up with some ideologically pure movement. And I'd like to remind people of one other thing here really quickly. It's real convenient for people on a fringe when people on the other side, who have loose associations with a fringe already, begin to emulate the stereotypical and worst characteristics of that fringe. So it's very, very good for a communist if Nazis are marching around in the streets with jackboots hailing Hitler. It's very, very good for them when that's what the public sees. It's very, very good for a bunch of white supremacists when Antifa members start defacing the Jefferson Memorial or the Lincoln Memorial or something. It's exactly what they want to see. They love it. The fringe loves this sort of stuff. What's going on right now doesn't play to centrism. It doesn't play towards libertarianism. It doesn't play towards monarchists or garden variety liberals and conservatives, progressives, or even like paleocons / maybe even like half-assed reactionaries. It only plays well to the fringe. And the media's response plays to the fringe. And the government's response plays to the fringe. And the tech world's response now plays to the fringe. When they try to suppress the Daily Stormer by throwing them to the wolves, they will take action to preserve themselves. They're not going away. They're not going to stop existing. It might take them a little time to reconstitute themselves. When they come back, they're going to have 10 times as many people paying attention to their material. They will then launch strikes on the left. The left will end up at some point facing the same suppression. It's not a case of, oh, the nation is moving inexorably to the left, always will, soon will be Maoist. It's not what's happening. Not at all. It's the rise of fringes. So they'll begin to grow in reaction to that far right, and the two sides will continue to grow and get more abusive. There will be more chaos online. There will be more chaos in the real world. People will you're going to see more chaos too. You watch the legacy media as well. They're going to be rapidly shifting back and forth between narratives over the coming years. Watch. See if I'm not right over the next year. Watch them. They'll be shifting around quite a bit. For economic reasons, for fiscal reasons, number one. For propaganda reasons, number two. They will. You're going to see pundits. They'll appear to be left-wing one day and right-wing the next. They're going to appear to want to preserve history one day and then lead social progress the next. That's what you're going to see because they're intellectually dishonest. They're in it for the money. So they can just maneuver themselves around. They don't have to have any strong-held beliefs because they don't. Meanwhile, all the Al Sharptons and David Dukes will continue to harangue and antagonize and say off-the-wall things, and they'll draw people to them. It'll work. Those marketing strategies, when people are under social stress, when they see scenes of violence that the legacy media keeps showing them, yeah, they're more given over to being receptive to some fringe. They become convinced that the commies are coming or the fascists are coming. It's exactly what'll happen. A lot of these people, I fully expect, say this again, I fully expect that some of you who support me now won't support me in a few years. Because you'll be dragged off to those fringes too. I can try to help immunize as many of you as possible from this. And I can stand for freedom. And I can analyze things properly. And I can also tell you a little bit about what will happen in the future. Because I have that ability at this point. But some of you will fall prey to it anyway. Some of you are going to become, at least subconsciously, you're going to fall more and more in line with a very stereotypical, very limited sort of worldview of hyper-progressivism or a hyper-reactionary sentiment of one sort or another. Some of you will fall prey to that. You'll also see e-celebs begin to fall prey to that. Now, as the center eventually returns, after the paradigm shift winds down because it's completed, the fringe will begin to wither, and social stress will decline. Those of us who have maintained integrity through that will be in a good position. Ultimately, by the way, some people are saying that I'm ignoring my own wisdom here because some weeks ago I said, oh yeah, the next paradigm will be built by the right. I'm not talking about the alt-right when I talk about the next paradigm. I'm talking about the upsurge of what is essentially I guess the fringe of the new right at the moment. Like not even Posobiec's people, but something slightly distinct that can't fully be defined yet. It's still malleable. It's still in chaotic formation. This group represents what the next paradigm will be built out of, because it's essentially a libertarian right movement. It's not identitarian in fashion. It's not alt-light. It's really comprised of people who are tired of PC bullshit, and that's going to be coming, and here's the point, not just from the left anymore, it's going to be coming from the right, because of the purism involved. Watch. See if I'm not right. Give me 2 years and see if these predictions don't pan out. It'll be funny when they do, because then people look back on this and say, well, guess he was right again. Yeah, and then all the people say, oh, you're being egotistical, though. They'll shut up really quickly. That's about all. Peace out.